Hi everyone, my name is Anne. Thanks for joining me on Art on the Creek. Right at this moment, we are not in my home studio in Parker, Colorado, but rather we're taking Leo for a walk, and I wanted to show you some of the sights of an average fall morning here where I live. The maple trees are turning, and here in the gulch, the cottonwoods are starting to turn a beautiful golden yellow. This one in particular I thought was so beautiful. This tree is really big and it just had this one little sprig of yellow coming through, and I just thought it was so lovely. While I was walking the dog, I was on the phone with my daughter and she sent me this picture from her apartment. She lives down in Colorado Springs. You can see Garden of the Gods there, the red rocks at the foot of Pikes Peak. It all makes me want to cuddle up with a cup of coffee. So for our beginner watercolor lesson today, let's do it. Let's go paint a nice cup of coffee. Are you ready? Here we go. Well, here we are. We've got everything set up for our beginner watercolor lesson number 9. And don't think that you need to be a beginner in order to do these lessons. They are certainly geared toward every skill and ability. It's just something that I wanted to classify as a beginner because I want to encourage you to be able to do this. This one has our usual supply list, and that is in the description below. I'll also put a card up here in the upper right hand corner where you can look at the playlist of all of these beginner watercolor lessons. There are several different subjects to cover, and nothing needs to go in order. You can do them whichever one appeals to you. The item that I decided to do today was a cup of coffee because when I got home from my walk, I was just a little bit chilled and still kind of sleepy. So I think that I kind of had coffee on my brain. And I just loved the shade of this blue little espresso cup. It looks like an espresso cup to me. It might be a full mug, but you can paint your own mug. You can paint whatever you like. And I'm actually going to fast forward through this drawing portion a little bit because true confessions, I am not that good at drawing dishes and plates and things like that. I always feel like they get a little bit off. So even though I'm drawing it here, I'm going to speed through that portion and let you guys go ahead and trace it if you like. Now, the picture that I'm using for our reference photo is linked in the description. If you don't see it right off, just click on the word more and that will expand the description. And there you can find the link to the Unsplash photo. So what I recommend that you do is print it, preferably in black and white. I think it's easier to see if you're going to trace it and print it in black and white. You can take a Sharpie and outline the lines that you want to have on your painting and then put that on a sunny window or on a light box and take your watercolor paper and put it right on top of that, and then you can trace it. So this, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of I don't know how to describe it. You know those, the old time signs that are so popular now, you can often find them in craft stores, reproductions of old time signs. You could put a price on this as well. I just put mine, the word coffee behind the cup when it was all said and done, mainly because I had some white space and I didn't know what to do with it. So we'll get to that point, but let's jump to the end of the drawing for now, and we'll pick it up here in just a moment. So this is the portion where I've got it set up, and unfortunately what you're going to see is a lot of me trying to get the curvature right on things and then having to redo it. I think that after I make some real progress on portraits, which actually, parenthetically, I think I'm going to focus on doing dishes. I just need a whole month to set aside to practice drawing plates and dishes and things that are curved, but when you're looking at them so that circle becomes an ellipse. I think that is just something that is very challenging for me as an artist, and it always has been. So what do? I avoid doing it. But there you go. I've got a drawing that I'm satisfied enough with. And the colors that we're going to use today are going to be so fun and so easy to use. Now, this set is a Paul Rubens set of paints. There are 24 paints in this set, and I really like it because the colors are so vibrant. They say it's a professional set, and it does have light fast ratings, but if you're going to do a commission piece, I wouldn't necessarily use this. I would keep this for your own private use and just really enjoy these paints. I've got everything, all of the supplies listed in the description below. And again, just click on that word more if you have trouble seeing all of this in the description, because it will open up the entire text for you. And the supply list, I've tried to keep it as affordable as possible. In every one of these videos in the beginner playlist, there is a list of supplies, and this one in particular, I'll highlight what we're using. It's the Paul Rubens set of 24 paints, the Princeton Snap brush set, the 5x7 Paul Rubens paper, the cold press paper, and I've got a pencil and an eraser, and there's a fine liner that I used at the end that is actually kind of a light gray. And you can use whatever you like for that. You can tape off the edges. You'll see what I mean when we get there. You can not do that at all. That whole part at the end is all optional. Of course, all of this is optional. You can make it a cup of tea if you'd rather. Do whatever you like. Put some flowers on your cup. Do whatever you like. Just make it so that it reflects you as an artist. So for me, I really enjoy having a cup of espresso in the afternoon, or a cup of coffee at a cafe is really quite a treat for me. And I usually go and I just get a regular drip coffee. I'm not very exciting. My husband and I have a little date that we do every weekend, and we go and get some coffee at the coffee shop that's right in our neighborhood. And we each just get the drip coffee. We're not very exciting, but this would be a real treat to me. So that's why I wanted to paint this one. The first thing I did was I got the mug wet, and I didn't wet the handle, just the mug. And now I'm over on the saucer, and I've got that portion wet as well, and I'm putting in a very thin wash of cobalt blue. I really like cobalt blue for this because it's just such a beautiful, soft blue. You could use ultramarine or cerulean, whatever you want to do. You could even use a phthalo blue, but for me, the cobalt was just the perfect color for this situation. I'm using that 3/4 inch stroke brush because I really like it. I really love that you can get so many different angles on this brush. It works very, very well for filling in curves like this. And you'll notice on the mug itself, I put in a thin wash over the whole mug and then went back in wet on wet and tapped in some more of that cobalt paint toward the right. That's to capture not only the curve of the mug, but where the shadows lie. And we want to be very aware of that throughout this painting, because where those shadows are is going to help us define our shape, our form, and our texture. So now let's mix up some more of this cobalt blue. We're just going to switch over to, I believe I'm using the number 6 round at this point. And I'm going to add just a little bit of the yellow. This is a Hansa yellow light. If you don't have this set, I would say whatever blue you're using, and then mix whatever cool yellow you have. Typically, it would be a lemon yellow in most watercolor sets. Whatever you have that's your lightest looking yellow, the one that's the least gold, that's the one that is your cool temperature in color. And if you're not sure, you can always look it up online. You can just Google, is cobalt blue warm or cool, and it will let you know. So if you have some troubles figuring that out, the internet is a wonderful source of information for that. I also have some really good pigment websites that I like to rely on. And if I remember, I'll try and put a link to one of those in the description, because there's just really good information about all the pigments in your paints out there if you're curious. But if you're not and you just want to have fun, you could certainly do that too. Now I'm going to paint our coffee, and for this one we want to use the burnt sienna. In this particular set, it's a PBR 7. In your set, it may be a PR 101, but you just want that burnt sienna. This particular set of Paul Rubens has some really nice browns in it. Right next to the yellow ochre, there's a synthetic iron oxide red, and that is a PR 101, which is also what a lot of the watercolor sets will use for a burnt sienna. But I really like that one. And then next to it, there is an umber, and that one is also really, really good. And it's a PR 101 mixed with a little bit of Naples yellow, so it's a little bit more of a golden tone. But the one I'm using mostly for the coffee here today is what they call burnt sienna or a brown iron oxide, and it is a PBR 7. It's the third one in from the end there. There's a black, a burnt umber, and then this one that we're dipping into. So what we're doing for the coffee is you're just going to get that entire surface of the coffee except for where the heart and the little tail are. Get that entire surface wet and start dropping the pigment in on the left. Once you have the pigment concentrated over on the left side, you can gently pull it to the right and it will be naturally paler on that side, which is what we want, because our light source is coming from the left in this case, which means the coffee on the left is going to be darker but lighter on the right because it's inside the cup. Everything outside the cup will be lighter on the left and darker on the right. So if you can just keep that in mind while you're painting, then all of those shadows and highlights will make sense to you. So what I've done is I've taken a little bit of a stylistic approach to this. The mug handle, if you do decide to draw that, I'm going to kind of jump around in this explanation of voiceover here, and I apologize if it confuses you, but I want to explain a really easy way to draw a mug handle, because that's something that took a little bit of a hurdle, I'll tell you, when I was beginning. Drawing things that are twisted can be really challenging. So look at what you're drawing in relation to other things. And I think that's what I'm struggling with when I try and draw the dishes and mugs and things. I really like the way my mug came out. Still not 100% sure on the saucer. I tell you guys, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like even though I have been drawing and painting most of my life, once I picked up watercolor, it was like a whole new ball game. And I feel like I did feel like I had to relearn several different things. And it is, you kind of have to think about it differently when you're painting watercolor. And I think in that process, it almost felt like I was losing my footing a little bit. And I lost a lot of confidence in my drawing abilities. So it's interesting to me how when you take on a new task, whatever it is, something you've got a pretty good amount of confidence going into, and then you're presented with this new task. And for me, that was watercolor. The first time I picked it up was in 2019. And this is after years and years of great success with acrylics and pastels, charcoal, all of that. I thought, oh, this shouldn't be any different. It threw me for a loop. So if you are being frustrated with watercolor right now, don't worry about it, because you are not alone. It is something that is a challenge because you have to think of it differently. You have to think of it in terms of going from light to dark, leaving white space. You can't just paint white over everything. You can use gouache and you can do that. But if you wanted to leave those natural highlights in a more traditional, I'm going to use the word traditional watercolor method, then you really have to remember and plan ahead and do a lot of different things. Now for me, I really like using a lot of expressive brush strokes, and that's what you're seeing here on the left side of the saucer. I've gone in and I've mixed some of that yellow with the cobalt blue to make kind of a teal shade. Because the mug, to me, isn't quite just light blue. It was a little bit more of a robin's egg blue in places. And I wanted to capture some of that change in the tone of the pottery or ceramic around the saucer here. So I decided to add some of the yellow into that cobalt blue to help turn it a little more teal. And I really do like that effect that you can achieve doing that with this set. I really like this set. But back to what I was saying about drawing the mug and something twisted and the handle and all of that. Try not to let the fact that you're using a medium that you may not be as familiar with, try not to let that throw you. Once I did get a lot more confident with watercolor, and it took about a year. I will say it took a year before I really felt like, wow, this is something that I really now have an entirely new respect for people who delve in watercolor, because and I really wanted to be able to share these experiences with you, and to help you understand that if you're feeling like you're never going to understand it, just keep going. If your painting gets to an ugly phase, don't worry about it. It just means you're not done yet. So let me jump ahead now to explain what we're doing with the shadow right here. I'm going in wet on wet. Now I've just painted that teal shade down there, and I'm staying away from the mug handle for now. But I'm adding in a little bit of that same burnt sienna with the cobalt to create a nice gray. And it really does work well. I've kind of kept it a little bit toward the blue, just mix some of that burnt sienna in with the cobalt, and then add a little bit more blue just to kind of keep it a nice cool gray. You don't want to make it too warm because you're really using a lot of cool blues here for the mug, but and you do want to reflect that shadow pretty accurately, because when we have a shadow, it's not just putting gray on something. That shadow also has light bouncing within it, and it's going to reflect the light of whatever the item is that is casting that shadow. So that's why I wanted to keep that gray mix a little bit toward that blue side. And that's very easily done by just adjusting the ratios of paint that you're mixing. After your painting has had time to dry, and you can either just let it dry or use a heat tool as I've done, and you just want to make sure it's good and dry before you continue on with this point. We're going to go into that burnt sienna again, and we're going to paint the surface of the mug handle. So we're painting the flat portions of it, not the edge that's facing you, but the flat portions. And we're just going to go in with some of that burnt sienna and fill that in. And that's just our first step. Don't worry about it. If it looks silly right now, it's going to be just fine. So let's go into our cobalt blue now, and we're going to just mix just a touch of cobalt blue into that and let this mix on its own by putting that along the edge. Now the edge that we're putting this on is the edge that's closest to us. So you'll notice I'm going into that cobalt blue and just lining that edge. Now I'm going to go in a little bit with that teal here that we mixed, and I'm going to do the rim, the edge that is facing us, the edge of the handle. So we've got a little bit of blue, the cobalt blue, creeping into the burnt sienna, and now I'm adding that teal. And I'm just kind of trying to spread it, mix it, get all the paint to really touch each other so that we can establish that the sides of the handle are blue-ish, but they're in shadow. So that's why I wanted to add that teal in there, because this entire handle is in the shadow. And now we're going to mix a little bit more of that gray. And you can see there when you mix, I wanted to add a little bit more cobalt just to pull it a little bit more to the cool side. And that's why it's so good for you to have a white mixing surface. You want to be able to see a true example of what your colors are going to be once they're on your paper. Watercolor always has a color shift. You're always going to see after it dries, the colors are going to be a little bit lighter than what you've put on. So don't let that worry you. Just be prepared for that it's going to look like, gosh, that's too pale now. And it wasn't pale when I was painting it. Well, that is normal. That's a color shift that happens when watercolor dries. So now wet on dry here with that shadow, I've got that in on the saucer, kind of slightly in the shape of the mug, leaving space around the handle there so that the colors don't all bleed together. And then I've gone around the rim of where the cup sits in the saucer. Now I'm going in with just some cobalt blue, and I'm putting a very light wash there, and I'm going to go in with that teal to darken it up just a little bit. Coming back in with the gray, going along the edge to let these colors all merge together. I'm really just kind of playing with the wet on wet here to kind of see what I need to get the right color. So you'll see there I lifted that off just a little bit, and it left exactly the right shade that I wanted. So now I can go ahead and accentuate that shadow with the gray that I mixed, and I used a sideways stroke motion there to bring some of that teal up into the mug. I think that this is where you can really use your artistic expression to bounce those colors off one another. Now let's go ahead and get this dry once again, and we'll go on to our next step. Once your painting is completely dry, you can come back to this portion. Now I'm using the number 4 round, and I've got a very, very light stroke going. I'm adding the rim onto the saucer here. You can see where I've concentrated that darkest pigment there up near the top left of the saucer. That's going to create a natural curve once I get this rim in. And the way that I'm doing the rim is I've left a little bit of white space between the edge that I'm putting on and the saucer, and I'm just going with a very, very light blue. And on the opposite side, I will go in with a little bit darker versions of that same cobalt. I think I used some of the gray there, and now I'm going to go in and bring it back to a little bit lighter on this side. Just make sure you leave a tiny bit of space in between the rim and the saucer, and then when you're looking at it, it will take on its own curve. After you get your rim painted on, if you don't like the curve of your saucer, just adjust the shadows a little bit. Take a peek at the reference photo again and adjust your shadows accordingly. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the coffee wet again with some clean water, but this time I'm going to go in with that umber shade, which is the one next to the burnt sienna, the one that's a little bit warmer, a little bit more red. And I'm just going to add just another layer on top of the coffee just to give it a little bit more depth. Now I'm keeping the darkest portion over toward the left again, and I'm just making those swirls come around and very gently going up next to the heart. because I want to make sure that that thin wash of paint that I'm putting on now, the one that is the umber, I want to make sure that that has a chance to kind of give that heart a fuzzy edge. So when you put your water on, make sure that you get very, very close to that heart. You don't want to go in too far because you don't want it to completely be covered. But now I'm taking an extremely thin wash and just kind of going inside the heart a little bit, but leaving a border. So I don't want to touch this to the edge, but what I'm doing is putting in a very, very thin wash because I don't think that that cream would be stark white. It would just be a little bit tan. So I wanted to go ahead and give that kind of a cream shade more than stark white. And then I thought the inside of the rim needed a little bit more shading as well, just to kind of keep with the feel of the entire painting. And so I'm using an extremely thin wash to go around the inside rim. And now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know, it needs something. So let's see what we can do about that. I'm going to go in with some colored pencils, and I'm just using the ones that are within reach. You can use any colored pencil set that you have. In fact, anything from the school supply aisle will work just fine. I'm going to go ahead and use a light blue and just define this rim just a little bit. And also the rim of the saucer. I just wanted to give it a little bit more texture and definition. And that's the really fun thing about using colored pencil over watercolor. You can get some really neat textures, not only from the paper, but because that watercolor provides you with really an underpainting to colored pencil. And then when you go over it, you can create some really wonderful soft velvety textures. And that's just what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of bringing the coffee cup forward a little bit. And if when you're doing this, you're not quite sure where you need to put these lines, you know, you can omit this step. This is totally optional. Or just go very lightly and just try little bits at a time and just see what they do. Just do a very light line and see if you like it. And if not, that's okay. You can take a kneaded eraser and blot up colored pencil just a little bit if it's something that you really truly don't like. But I would say if you're going to add this and you're not sure, go in lightly at first and just see if it's something you like. The first pencil I used was a very light blue, and now I'm using kind of a phthalo blue. It's a real nice blue. So if you have a navy, that would work too. Just you just need a light blue and a dark blue in your colored pencils here, and I'm just accentuating the shadows. But the reason I wanted to continue this is because I was having so much fun playing with the texture that comes out in this. I thought it just gave this cup a real pottery kind of feel to it, and I really love the way that it was able to, the colored pencil rather, enhance the shadows, and it enhanced the separation of the mug from the saucer. So I was just really having fun playing, defining some areas here, and you'll notice when I shade this, the indentation of the saucer there, I added a little bit more shadow, but left it light right next to the cup because that's where the light is hitting it. So be aware of that when you are going over things with colored pencil. You don't want to undo any kind of light and shadow nuances that you've already worked hard to create. So you might want to have that reference photo next to you when you're doing your colored pencil, just so that you can be sure that you don't go over something that you intended to leave light and bright, because this will draw attention to the area that you're coloring and it will definitely enhance it. So I'm just going to finish this up here, go around the edge just a little bit more on the right hand side with this darker pencil, and then let's get into adding some things to the background, shall we? Once you've gone around your painting and figured out where you want to add your colored pencil and you're satisfied with that, then we can go ahead and work on the background. Now, what I thought would be kind of nice for this is to go ahead and first of all erase some of the unnecessary pencil lines. Now, like I said, it will pick up colored pencil too if you go really vigorously with this. So I was just kind of trying to remove some pencil lines from that the cream area up there and the inside of the cup. So now I'm kind of thinking about what I want to do here, and I think I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and sign it. But of course, if you've been watching my videos for any length of time, that's about the time that I kind of look things over and think, you know what, I'm not done, I need something. So let's go get a ruler and let's create a little border for this. Now what I'm doing is I've got a ruler here that I can see through, and I really like this ruler. And I'm sorry if my head gets in the way a little bit here because my eyes were having trouble focusing. That's what happens when you get as many candles on your birthday cake as I have, or if you're younger and you do a lot of detail work. So Forgive my head when it gets in the way. I am sorry about that. What I'm doing is I'm going in at 3/8 of an inch and at 1/2 an inch. And you can use whatever metric you like, whatever spacing you like. I decided that I wanted this to look like, how can I think it's those French cafe napkins. You know, they're white, really thick cotton or linen, and they have a beautiful colored weave on the end, and I really love that. And I associate it with French cafe. I don't know what you all may associate that with, but I think that that is a very pleasant feel that would be nice to add to this. And boy, I'm looking at my head here as it's in the way. My hair is pretty scary today. Sorry, I literally did just come in from walking the dog and then sitting down to do this. So yes, I'm sorry that you're seeing my, what I call my crazy old lady hair. I just got it back in a clip because I just wanted to get down here and paint as soon as I got home and had a cup of coffee. So we've got a gray pigment liner that I've used here. It's actually a Copic multi-liner in warm gray, and it's a 0.1. You can use whatever you like. I've got a couple of lines there and I'm thinking, well, that's kind of what I want, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm really thinking this out as I go. And you know, this might happen to you too when you're painting along, and that's totally fine. You may decide this part's crazy and I don't know why you did this, but you can just be done as soon as you're done with the cup. In fact, if you wanted to put a background of a table, just like in the reference photo, that's totally fine too. But I decided that this had the feel and the look of one of those cute little signs that would be hanging up in a coffee shop. So I kind of wanted to go with that angle. So I'm going in right now in this stripe. Now, another way you can do this is you can tape it off, and that way your lines will be absolutely straight. I actually did not want mine to be absolutely straight. So that is why I went in with that pigment liner that is very, very faint, and am painting this by hand because I really don't have that steady of a hand, and I wanted to take advantage of that. So know your limitations and use them. That's my best advice to you today. I'm going to go in with the cobalt blue at the top portion of that vertical line and then pick up that teal color that we mixed for the bottom. And now as I go across the top, I'm going to go in with the coffee color that we used, which is once again that burnt sienna. And I'm keeping it darkest toward the left, and I'm just going to pull that pigment all the way through, and I'm just trying to stay inside the lines as much as I can, you know, just as long as I don't have, I'm praying that my wrist doesn't pop, and then I'll have a real experience on my hands. But I want to go to about here, and then I'm going to rinse my brush off and just pull the rest down with water because I want this to kind of fade as it goes off to the right. And then I'll come in at the end and we'll go ahead and add another line to it. But meanwhile, let's see what we can do next. Stylized lettering is something that I really like to do. As long as it's in print, I'm happy and I love doing it. I'm not really good at lettering. That's something that I've tried to do. I've tried to do calligraphy. I've tried to do lettering. And I love it. It's fun. But once again, I think it just takes more patience than I have. So I'm going to do some block letters back here and spell the word coffee. And I'm just kind of using my imagination as to how these letters would look, and I'm trying to spread it out as far as I can so that it's fairly evenly spaced. It's not going to end up perfect, but that is okay because this is just something I'm doing to have fun for me, for myself, and I'm going to hang it on our art wall in the background here so that you'll be able to see it. But if you do this for yourself, I kind of hope that you would hang it in your kitchen or send it as a greeting card to someone because it really is a fun, happy painting. And I think that when you have something like this where you have the suggestions of the cafe napkin and then kind of an old-time lettering on the sign that says coffee, I just think it's very welcoming and fun and bright. And I hope you agree. I hope you guys are having fun with this one. So once we get the lettering done, then we're going to go in and paint it the same sort of way that we did the stripe. So let's go ahead and add this other stripe on here, and then we'll go ahead and fill in the letters. And filling in the letters couldn't be simpler. And again, this is just something I decided to do. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just used a cobalt blue on the top half of the letters, and then I merged that wet into wet with the burnt sienna on the bottom half. So it kind of just marries the two colors that we've used throughout. You know, and I wanted to add, if this is something that you really enjoy doing, if you like painting along with my videos and my tutorials, I really thank you, number one. And you know, I also do reviews on this channel, and if you like those and you'd like to get an advanced view of the reviews or have a more in-depth full-length tutorial ranging on all skill levels, any subject, you know, you might want to consider a membership to my channel. Rather than opening a Patreon, I've decided to do everything right here on YouTube and create memberships. So just up under this video, there is a button that says join, and there will also be a link in the description where you can learn more. And if a membership is something that's right for you, then you'll get all kinds of benefits like early access to videos. Often when I review supplies, I no longer have use for them. And rather than have these very lightly used supplies that I've used once for a demonstration or a review, rather than have those sit and collect dust in my studio, I am more than happy to share these with you guys, my Pikes Peak members, in the form of a drawing. And I will hold those from time to time and mail the item to you completely free of charge. Lots of fun happening. If you want a little bit more one-on-one time, and if I can figure out how to do live chats and all that sort of thing, that will also be an option. But members on my channel will always have a little bit of priority, but I will always continue to offer the free videos here and free reviews. Just if you'd like a little bit more in-depth feedback on your paintings and, you know, little one-on-one, that's something that you could definitely get as a member. So consider that, and if not, I certainly appreciate everything else that you're doing. I also have super thanks if you'd like to give a one-time gift to Art on the Creek. Everything that you do that helps my channel really does, well, it helps my channel. Anything that I earn, any kind of monetary feedback that I get from my efforts here in teaching you all on YouTube, that money goes directly back into my channel, whether it's for new technological equipment, or new supplies to review for you, anything like that. All of that goes directly back into Art on the Creek, so you will definitely see the results. It's a lot like public radio or public television. If you're enjoying it and you'd like to support it, I would certainly appreciate that extra bit of effort. So I'm going to thank you in advance, and thank you for just considering. If that's not up your alley right now, I totally understand. We've always got the ability to like, comment, and share these videos, and I thoroughly appreciate that. I love hearing from you guys, and I love interacting with all of you, and I love to hear what you've got going on in your own art studios. So let's go ahead and get this dry, and I think we are done. Well, there we are, guys, and I don't know about you, but I'm about ready to go have another cup of coffee. I hope everyone's having a wonderfully creative day, and enjoy your week. Have fun painting this cup of coffee, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye now.